Well, a couple days ago and a couple days after it had already been out, we saw Wolfman, the new Leigh Whannell horror movie in the Dark Universe, reboot of the Dark Universe that goes back to the series' superhero roots. Connor, what is the plot of Wolfman?
The movie, The Wolfman, is about a man who looks like a mixture of Nathan Fielder and Mark Ruffalo. But when he was a fat Italian child, he went to the woods with his dad, who was a prick, basically, and they bump into a werewolf. Fast forward 30 years, and it turns out his dad had just passed away. So, since him and his wife's marriage is on the rocks, I guess, they briefly show, they decide to go in a U-Haul truck out to Oregon to visit his dad's farm. But when they're on the way there, they lose GPS signal, and they meet a guy who's like, I can take you to the farm. And then it goes from like afternoon to night immediately, despite the fact that he's like, it's just up the road. But then they almost hit a wolf man in the woods, and then they swerve really hard and they crash into a tree. And then the wolf man eats their guy, and then he's like, come on, wife and daughter, let's hide in the house. And they're hiding in the house and everything's good, but then the wolf man reaches through the doggy door and scratches Nathan Fielder, Mark Ruffalo guy. And then he's like, oh, my wife with a bad haircut and child who I love so much, I'm turning into a wolf man. But then he stops understanding them because he's turning into a dog person. And then this happens for a while, but then he transforms fully into a dog person. And then the werewolf pops through the door, who has the same tattoo as his dad, revealing that his dad became a wolf person. Presumably by the wolf person who...
From the start.
So then they get in a Dark Universe TM superhero fight where the two punch the hell out of each other.
The clone antagonist battle.
But then the dad dies. But then he becomes an evil wolf man and wants to eat his wife with the shitty haircut and daughter. So then they run to a tree fort, and then the shitty haired wife is like, I'm gonna shoot you, even though my hair looks like a bus driver or something. I look like a freaking 65-year-old lesbian, and then he shoots her.
And their daughter's named Ginger for some reason.
And then he dies. And then the audience goes, I think the movie was trying to tell me something, but I don't know what. So Aiden, what did you think of The Wolfman 2025?
Wolfman was a big disappointment. I like Leigh Whannell. I'm a big Saw fan, as should be apparent. Leigh Whannell also made Upgrade and Invisible Man in the past decade or so. And those were both pretty good. I liked Upgrade a lot more than I liked Invisible Man, but Invisible Man was fun and a nice twist on the concept, and Wolfman is a fucking mess.
Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward story of like parental fears, where like his dad's a jerk because he worries, and he's sometimes a jerk because he worries, and they have a bunch of like first draft ass tacky lines where he's like, he gets infected with wolf AIDS, and he's like coughing up blood, and then he's like, I've become the thing I wanted to protect you from. The whole movie feels like a first draft, and also it's really fucking boring. For a movie called Wolfman, there's not an actual lot of the Wolfman in it. And I'm not talking in like the classic... I'm not talking in like the classic horror movie way of like you don't show the villain until it gets laid, although when they...
I think they kind of show the Wolfman too much throughout the movie, but not enough as well.
You only get little glimpses, which is probably the right call because he looks like fucking shit. He looks fucking horrible. Both the Wolfmans are like, they're just like guys with a bunch of shitty fake hair glued to them.
Well, that's what the Lon Chaney version was.
Yeah, that came out in 1920. It's not
like
acceptable
1940. But I think they were. I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt and say they wanted to try to keep the design philosophy that was made sheerly out of necessity because it was 1940.
They couldn't do better back then. Yeah, they look fucking horrendous. And whenever CGI comes into play, it also looks horrible because he has like Batman Detective Wolf vision, where he'll start like coughing and then everything turns blue and his daughter's eyes get really sparkly and it looks like fucking ass.
Yeah.
Everything in this movie kind of looks like shit except the shooting. The shooting is really good. It's like a really well shot movie and very deliberate, as was the style of Leigh Whannell's previous two movies. And there is, I think the two leads are honestly pretty good for what it's worth. The kid's not very good, but you know, that's a kid actor, so it's kind of a die roll what you get on that. But the two adults are fairly decent. It hits you over the head with the like parental fears theme, and it just all feels like a first draft, and it's kind of nothing happens because like he's just like laying around and throws up, and then the Wolfman will like tap on the window and go like this, and then scamper off, and then he'll throw up for a while. There's a couple good body horror moments, like when he pushes all his fingernails out and bites off his tongue. That's kind of fun, but it's not scary. Like not a lot actually happens until the end, and then when stuff finally does happen, it's two of the most horrendous werewolves ever punching each other in a living room, and it's just like the clone antagonist fight, and then his wife shoots him, and the daughter's like, oh, he wants to be put down because he's so sad about getting wolf AIDS. That's kind of the movie. It reads like it's not done somehow, even though it's been like 5 years since Invisible Man, and this has been planned for a good while. You'd think it would feel like a more complete movie, but it feels like a first draft that they just went out to the woods and shot. It's just people sitting in a house and a guy throwing up, and it's just kind of a nothing movie. If I'm being honest, there's not a lot that I got from it in any regard. Very occasionally, I would be impressed by the shooting, although it certainly doesn't get as fancy as Upgrade, and a lot of things in this movie are just so fucking ugly, it's crazy. It did have better day and night though than The Strangers Chapter 1. I'm excited for The Strangers Chapter 2. Really hyped for that one.
I thought they were both supposed to come out within like 2 months of each other. They must have pushed off the second one.
They're all filmed. They filmed them all back to back to back as one big
Maybe they're trying to...
I don't know if they scrapped them after the first one was an Omega flop, or...
Maybe they're just going to streaming and they're trying to negotiate a deal, would be my guess.
Yeah, throw them on Hulu or something, or Tubi where they belong.
See if Tubi will give them like $500,000 to recoup the classic, can we write this off on our taxes?
Yeah. I was disappointed by The Wolfman. I wish I had something nice to say about it, but it feels like 60% of a movie, and it just doesn't come together like Leigh Whannell's previous couple have. Connor, what'd you think of Wolfman?
Yeah, I also was looking forward to this one. Upgrade was amazing, and The Invisible Man was alright. It definitely was a little tropey, but they came up with a concept and they went with it. And they went with it hard. And this movie is like, okay, I want to do another Universal Monsters movie, so I guess I'll do The Wolfman, because it's like, I guess Universal's like, why don't you reimagine another one? You reimagine The Invisible Man as some guy in a superhero costume that could go invisible and beat people up.
Beat his wife.
Beat his wife. And he's like, I guess, like, what if the Wolfman could, like, turn into a wolf and beat his wife? And Universal's like, good enough with me. Good enough for me.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of sloppy plot where so his dad was kind of a prick, and
he's a really nice
the
guy.
metaphor is that prick dads are werewolves. So then he just wants his family to get back together and love each other the way they once did. but then once or twice he's kind of yells and gets upset. I wouldn't go so far as to say he has anger issues, but he doesn't handle stress very well sometimes. So he's a bad dad and becomes a werewolf, I guess. I don't know if they were... I think they were going for something with the metaphor, but they never thought of a way to make it happen
the
cleanly.
bad dad thing only comes together if you ignore the fact that he has a superhero battle with his bad dad.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things you have to ignore, because one thing is he isn't a bad dad. The one point, he gets mad at his daughter at one point and yells at her for climbing on a busy intersection. She was climbing on some construction equipment, so he's like, "Here, get the hell down from there." And it's like,
That's a very reasonable time to get angry.
That's a reasonable time. He wasn't even that angry. Then he apologized and bought her ice cream. Like, honestly, like, if every time my dad screamed at me I got ice cream, I would have got a lot of ice cream. My dad swore a lot yelling at us kids.
Yeah.
So I feel like... I don't get the vibe that I would go so far as to call him, like... I wouldn't even call the dad really abusive. The dad was his dad was an intense douchebag from what we saw. Maybe he was like an asshole or something more, but that's not what the film chose to portray. So the whole message just kind of falls apart because it's never really...
His dad's like strict and
done well.
Yells at him, but obviously cares for him at the same time, and like goes out to fight the Wolfman to protect him and shit.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. I don't think you should be comical. I understand being like, well, we have to make it like subdued a little bit. We don't want it to be like a cartoon of this guy's like punt kicking his daughter around and then becomes an evil wolf man. Then you're really beating the message on the head, which frankly is what he did with the Invisible Man, and I think it worked better. I did complain that it was a little overbearing, the message in that movie, but like...
It worked.
So you gotta find the middle ground here, bud. Like, you can't have, like, dad that some might consider kind of mean, but not really. I mean, I wouldn't consider the dad mean. I would consider the grandpa mean, but, like, regardless, the message sucks. Doesn't really work. The mom sucks probably worse from the vibe I'm getting, because she's, like, screaming and telling him that he's a piece of shit and stuff, and, like, doesn't want to, like... spend time with their family, and she's like, "You're a great dad and I'm a piece of shit," and he's like, "Yeah, no you're not, like you try really hard."
No, she doesn't.
That's what he says.
Yeah, I know what the script says.
but then she's like, "No, I don't." But then, like, I guess, like, she goes to the woods, but then there's like the movie kind of just ends after he dies. Like,
yeah, they
don't like really have a moment to say like, "Oh, now I value life" or something. Everyone's just sad. And they leave, and there's not really like
Dad and Grandpa got turned into guys with pubes glued to their face and died in the woods.
Yeah, and then on that note,
I guess
they didn't really want to go like realistic werewolf. I think they were trying to mirror the original movie too much, but they got to remember that the original movie's an almost 100-year-old movie with Lon Chaney. Like, they didn't have the technology to make a convincing-looking werewolf that wasn't just a guy with pubes glued to his face. So I will give that movie a pass, and I think it's charming there. But when it's like a weird mix of like CGI and stuff, it just doesn't work. They also try to do some body horror aspects, which occasionally were really cool. The couple times it happens, it's like they wanted to do The Fly, but they didn't really want to commit to it, kind of like they didn't want to commit to the message.
Yeah, it's like a less gross version of The Fly in a lot of regards.
And then a lot of times I just feel like the movie doesn't know what it really wants to do. The plot outline was family has some minor marital struggles and decides to try to reconnect in the woods. Okay, fine horror movie setup. They go to the cabin in the woods, and then I think they sat there and said, "Now what?" And then they said, "We'll limp through it and really have to make a good finale." But they limped through it and didn't make a good finale.
Yeah, they made a really bad finale.
Also, I think another thing that is kind of interesting to me is, like, this is like the Wolfman in the same way the Invisible Man was the Invisible Man. It's all in, like, you know, name alone, basically. Like, Universal, I think Universal's like, just take the concept and then do what you do. But yeah, I feel like this didn't come together. I feel like the biggest problem is the script, because a lot of the cinematography is beautiful. Like, the movie's set in Oregon. I don't know where they shot for sure. It could have been like Northern California or something, but
Yeah.
just like these big woodlands with super tall ancient trees, and just he found really cool valleys, shot really cool scenes, and just did really nice color correction to make the film very vibrant and beautiful.
Yep.
You kind of have this dichotomy of like the beauty of nature and this evil wolf man, which is definitely something he said in some meeting with executives, and then like he doesn't do anything with it. I think that's the problem. Is it's like a collection of half-ass ideas rolled into a movie, and then the movie came out, and what it ended up being was kind of a disappointing half-ass collection of ideas, because I genuinely, I don't think, fucking what's his name,
Leigh
Whannell is one of my favorite filmmakers by any means, but I thought he's been consistently okay. And I think this movie's mediocre. You don't win them all. And I think there's some positive aspects. I'm not going to totally write him off, but I just feel like the script...
Oops.
I just feel like the script didn't come together in the end, and it basically made the movie kind of undercooked. I don't know. I feel like he just kept pushing it. I feel like angles either had to be followed through or just abandoned, instead of just hinting at 1,000 different angles that go nowhere. So Aiden, would you recommend the Wolfman 2025 edition?
No. It's just not very good. There's a lot of interesting shooting, and there are occasional glimpses of good aspects, but it's just such a mess that never comes together in any interesting way to make it even worth watching for the aspects that are actually good buried in there somewhere. Connor, would you recommend Wolfman?
Yeah, I agree. I don't even think the setup's that bad. I just think it just never lands on its feet, and it just kind of starts tumbling once they get to the house, and it never really recovers. It's just a bunch of half-baked ideas, so I wouldn't recommend watching it. Yeah.
Yeah.